Hey folks, so in this video we're going to be doing a deep dive into the gestures component. The gestures component allows you to have 3D VR gestures or 3D gestures in VR and be able to record them and to be able to compare them into the recorded gestures in the database and data asset that also comes with the plugin. And you can use this to trigger actions or to do a lot of other bunch of cool stuff where you need a gesture input. All right. And yeah, so this video is going to be using version 2.4.1 at a minimum. So you need to have that version, and it's a fresh version as of this recording, and it's now up in GitHub and should be up in the marketplace in a couple of days. We'll start off with a fresh demo level that we've got here. And the first thing that we're going to do is create a database. So this database is going to be based on a special data asset that came with the plugin. And what you need to do is to add new miscellaneous data asset. And if you got the plugin all set up, you're going to see RunebergVR gestures database here on the selection list. Click select, and let's just name this MyDB, for example. All right, so this is going to be the database that we're going to use to store our gesture patterns in. So as you see, it starts out as empty. And as you record your gestures here, the gestures are saved across sessions. So you don't need to worry about it being deleted or reset after you've closed the application. So it's going to be saved there. So if you want, you can do a separate level for doing the recording of the gestures, and then package the resulting database or data asset file into your package project. All right. So for this purpose, we're just gonna leave it as empty here, and we're gonna both record gestures using a left hand, and we're gonna try to find a gesture using a right hand. All right, so let's just save it here. All right, and let's do demo VR pawn. So what we'll do is we'll add the gestures component now onto, let's start with the left hand here. All right, and we set the known gestures database to the database that we just created there. Compile and save. Alrighty, let's just duplicate that, Control W, that's what I just did there, and then just change that to right and reattach it to the motion controller. So the gestures component has to be attached to a motion controller, as you can see here. Alright, and that's how simple it is to do the initial setup. Create a database from a data asset that's part of the plugin, and create the gestures, and link them up here. So RunebergVR gestures left, you see that I've set up the known gestures there, and then I just duplicated that and copied it to the right motion controller. Alright, so what I want to do is when I press the left trigger, so let's just do that, left trigger motion controller actually. So motion controller, left trigger. All right, that was way zoomed out. All right, so left trigger, once it's pressed, I want to start recording a session. And once it's released, I want to stop recording a session and then save it to the database. Let's do that. Drag along the gestures here. Let's do a start recording session, recording gesture, and stop recording gesture. Okay, easy peasy. Just do that there. Released. We're gonna clean up in a little while. All right, so stop recording gesture, very important. If we're doing a recording session, we need to tick this save to DB here, and just do that. Just this, I have a little bit more space, and yeah, that should be it. So just doing a little bit of cleanup here. Alright. Yep, a little bit more presentable. Alright, so once we've stopped recording the gesture and we've saved the gesture to the database, what this node does is it returns the gesture that we've just recorded. So what we're going to be doing is we want to draw that gesture. Okay, so let's just draw gesture, VR gesture, there. And alright, so we want that to happen after the recording. We wanted to draw that gesture there. And we're going to choose a line mesh. So we're going to use a beam view. And we're just going to use green. I've got a material here called m_felt, which is pretty much a green material, felt green material. Alright, so line mesh and line material, they're both required, so you need to have them both for the actual gesture to appear. So it's I'm using a spline component here, and the mesh is just a simple beam mesh, kind of like what we've used on the teleport component. So we'll just keep adding that beam mesh, that line mesh, and apply the material that we've specified here, drawing along the spline for the VR gesture. Okay, so origin location and origin rotation is going to be where is the component going to start drawing the recorded gesture, or the gesture that we've just recorded here. So we want that normally from where the camera is. So I'm just going to here, and I'm just going to get world transform. I'm using get world transform, so I have, if I split this, I should have access to both the location and the rotation. Oops, sorry. There you go. So origin location and origin rotation right over there. And that's pretty much it. Offset distance, let's just leave it at default 100 and a lifetime of 3, so it means it's gonna stay there for 3 seconds. And that's pretty much it, I think. Oh, yep. So we've done all these things for stop recording gesture and draw VR gesture. So we haven't filled out anything for the start recording gesture. So for this one, recording interval is important. So if you don't put anything on the recording interval, such as like this, 0, it will just default to 0.05. The lower the number, the higher the accuracy, because the more data points gets recorded. So what it is as you move your motion controller along, it records the X, Y, and Z values, so the location of where your controller is in local space, and it starts recording that based on the interval that you put here. So this recording interval is in seconds. So I want to, maybe let's increase the accuracy. So let's put it to 0.01. So every, let's increase it further. So every 0.001 second, it's going to start to record a location in space. All right. We're not going to give this a gesture name, but you can if you want to. If you don't put anything here, it just applies a random GUID to the gesture and add it to the database. We're going to see that in a while. And draw line, what it does is it allows a real-time drawing. So while you're drawing, you're gesturing the recording, it starts to draw it for you. So you're going to be able to see it while you're drawing it. So this is off by default, but you can turn it on. Once you turn it on, you're required to do the line mesh and line material, so you need to specify a mesh. If you don't put anything there, nothing's just gonna appear. So it's okay, let me just type beam mesh. Yep. So, and then the material would be let's use the arc. I've got a spline arc material here. And alright, so and a note, if you're creating your own material, what you need to do is just click here, browse. Make sure for it to be applied properly onto your spline, to any of the splines. So they need to have this tag here. So if you type spline, you would have something used with spline meshes. So you need to make sure that that's ticked there. If that's not ticked, this material won't appear. Okay. All right, so let's get back to here. So I've already done that for that, and that goes the same way. So anything that you're applying a material to on any of the nodes here in the gestures component, since I'm applying it to a spline, so make sure that your material, once you create it or once you import it, make sure that it's compatible with the spline by ticking that tick box that I just showed you. All right, so you can add a line offset and a rotation offset. So what this does, and similar to this area here for the offset location, is if you have, let's say for this demo level here, originally it has a 45-degree rotation here. When you create this demo level it comes with the engine. So if you file a new level and then you select this one, VR Basic, the player start is rotated to 45 degrees. So, and of course, as you could see here, 25, 25, and then 96. So there's a bit of an offset. What you can do is, let me just set that to 0 in the meantime. But what you can do is, if you do have those, 25, 25 here, you just put the same offset here, 25, 25, so that the line comes up properly. Okay. Since the best is always 0, so I've just zeroed it out. You can always assign your level to 0, or you can always rotate it to where your player start's going to be rotating. Obviously, that's not always an option, so I've given this offsets here for you. So the rotation offset as well. So if it's rotated, so for the line offset, just before I forget, the Z, you don't need to do anything on the Z. So if this is 96, you can just ignore that, set that to 0, okay? But the X and Y you need to change. So if this is 25, 25 here, so this player start, 25, 25 here, then you need to change this 25, 25, okay? Same here. If the rotation is 45, by default it is, you would need to change this to 25 as well, like so, okay? Or the simplest way is, of course, just to simply zero this out. Simply because you never know anyways where the user would be facing at any time. If they have their headset, if they put on their headset looking left or right, doesn't really matter. So there's still a chance that they won't be looking at where you want them to look. So at the end of it, it's just a matter of choice. So I've just set it up to 0, 0, 0. The location is, you can set it up here without the Z. So the Z you can add if your origin, because it will start drawing from the origin of your mesh. If you need to do a bit of tweak, you can still use this one as well. Okay, so I'll show you, because this mesh that I'm using actually has an issue, and we're gonna see that in a bit. Alrighty, so let's just double check and forget anything. Nothing, and that should be it, and we can give this baby a whirl. Alright, let's record a infinity symbol. Yep, turn screen, yep, and it's recorded. Alright, so next we're gonna be doing so we've recorded a gesture. Let's just have a quick look at that recorded gesture. So remember, we've created this database here, because you could see now there's a new gesture pattern. Ooh, exciting. And in that gesture pattern, it's a structure with a gesture name. So you can change this to any gesture name that you want. And the pattern is here with all of the locations. So zeroed out into local space. All right, so you can, what's important here is a gesture name. So you can have, let's say, like 3 or 4 or 5 gestures of the same name. That's fine. What it does is that any of those gestures will return the same name. So in the next in the next step, we're going to be looking at actually finding a gesture in the gesture database and then trying to look for the gesture name. All right, so let's just change this to infinity, for example. All right, so, and that's it. If we go here, let's try to, if we have the right trigger, we're going to do the same thing, except we're not going to save to the database, but we're just actually going to look for something. Okay, so I'm just thinking if it's better to copy it, or yeah, let's just start from scratch. So motion controller, right trigger. So motion controller, right trigger. Zoom that in a little bit, and let's grab the gestures right. So right trigger, and we're gonna do the same thing. Start recording gesture, and we're gonna stop the recording gesture, but this time we're not gonna be doing any saving to the database, so we're gonna leave that alone, but we're gonna still draw the line. Let's just put these things in, and gesture name, nothing, draw line, line mesh again, beam, and I'm gonna use material, so let's use the yellow one again, so it's arc, line mesh, and no line offsets, no rotation offsets, that's fine. Let's just do this. It's gonna bother me if it's not straightened out. Alright. Okay, so let's push that there because I know I'm gonna use it in a while. Alright, so here we've drawn the gesture immediately, and alright, and we've saved it to the database. Here we're not gonna save it to the database. We're still gonna use a return value, but this time we're gonna check this return value for any likeness in the database. So we're gonna compare this gesture that we've just recorded using the right motion controller to any of the known gestures currently in the database. Okay, so how do we do that? We'll use this one, find gesture, right? So find gesture, and you don't need to tack this on. It knows to check that the gesture it's going to check for is the one that's currently here. That was the last recorded gesture, and it returns a string. So we do an equal string, and for this one, the default is like this, unknown gesture. So if it can't find it on the database, it will, don't know if I can zoom that in a little bit more, but all right. So unknown underscore gesture, so it will compare it. If it's equal to unknown gesture, that means it wasn't able to find it. So let's just do a branch there, right? Branch. Alright, so if it's an unknown gesture, what do we want to do? You grab this here again, and we do a draw VR gesture. We're going to draw a gesture, and we're going to do beam mesh. So since it's unknown gesture, let's do a red. Okay. Line material red, origin, location, and rotation. We're going to use the camera, of course. So again, get world transform. Split that, and origin, location, origin, rotation. No offsets here. Fine. All right. Next is, if we can't find it, we're just gonna duplicate this, right? It's still gonna be part of this thing. And instead of the material red, we're gonna do to a blue material. Means if it's infinity symbol, then it's gonna turn blue. Anything else should be red. So that, that. Alright, so let's just put that in there. So we may need to zoom out a little bit more to get this tidied up. Now it takes just a few seconds to tidy it up, so I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on it. Just saves you a bit of time as well when you're trying to troubleshoot if we do get into trouble later. Alright, so that's all set up. So I guess I've forgotten one thing is, of course, we're gonna draw what gesture. So the gesture here is we're gonna have to draw this gesture that came from the the last stored gesture. I should actually default that to the last known gesture, but alright, something for future release. Just clean that up. Alright, so that's it. A little bit messy, but okay. Acceptable, yes. Alrighty, so we've got it all set up. Let's just double check. So if it's an unknown gesture, then it's gonna draw a red beam. If it's not, it's gonna draw a blue. Oops, yeah. That means it's a known gesture, it's gonna draw a blue beam. And the O, yep, see. This one, I could actually just crisscross here, but it's gonna be messy. So the origin location and origin rotation would be from the camera. So what I did there is I just copied that and Control W. So it's a duplicate keyboard shortcut. Alright, so offset distance, everything looks good. I think we're good to go. Let's try it. Okay, first we're going to try a circle. And that should turn red, meaning it hasn't found it. And infinity symbol next, it should turn blue this time, meaning it has found the gesture in the database. For accuracy, what you need to do is, as I mentioned earlier, is during the recording, you could increase the recording interval. So obviously the more recorded points there are to compare, the more accurate it would be. So if you do that there, so I actually forgot to do it here. So that would have defaulted to 0.05. So if I wanted to do a little bit more accuracy, I would record it with 0.001. It's always best to do the recording for the check and the recording for the actual saving to the database with the same intervals. So you're comparing apples to apples. Okay, although it did do quite well on our tests earlier. Yep, but make sure that they're actually the same, just to make sure that other gestures you don't get a false positive. So a false positive is it comes up yes when it wasn't the correct gesture. So you could either increase the accuracy recording intervals or increasing the other variables I'm going to be mentioning in a while. Or obviously you could also write over different gestures so that they don't come up. So let's say if in your recorded gesture somehow your circle overlaps like a triangle. So if you do a triangle, it comes up as a circle. So you might want to record a triangle so you have that in the database and then name it so that it doesn't come up as a triangle. Okay, so that's one thing you can do, or you can increase the accuracy. So let's see, the accuracy you can tweak there. And there are a couple of variables here as well. So if you click on the gestures here, so the global, let's do it on the right because this is where we're using the comparison from. So the global threshold, yep. So it's how far away each of the points can be. So that so the less, that means the less of this number here, the more restrictive it's going to be. That means it's going to be more pessimistic on its check. It's going to be a bit more difficult to do a like a likelihood. So if you're getting a lot of negatives, you could increase this, and that would mean you would get a lot more comparisons, but it means as well that you might get false positives. So it's a bit of tweaking. So I've tried to find a good balance. So this is normally a pretty good balance, but you can tweak it depending on the gestures you're doing and how complicated the gestures are. So the vector threshold is the same. So kind of like the global threshold, but it's more in the local space. So the lower the number, the more pessimistic it is. That means it would be a little bit more stricter. The higher the number, the less strict. And the same for the max slope. Okay, so all those three variables plus the recording interval defines how accurate the gesture component would be to compare 2 or 3 different gestures, or any gestures that's actually stored on the database. All right. And yeah, so, and there's obviously a couple of tricks, just as I mentioned. If you're doing a circle and you actually drew a triangle, but it's coming up as, yes, it's a circle, so you can record a triangle, and so that the triangle won't come up as a positive when you draw a triangle, so it actually comes up as a triangle. So that's one trick. And of course, you can just ignore the triangle if you're not going to use it. And another thing is, yeah, although it has a bit of tolerance, as I mentioned on the intro video, I think a couple of weeks back, we have you can record a gesture and then facing, for example, this direction here, and then it will remember where you're facing. So if you do the gesture, it's going to remember where you were facing. But for example, if you wanted to do on the reverse side, then you need to record that gesture, the exact same gesture, and put it under the exact same name, recording it back. So you need to go, if you want like a full 360, you face north, record a gesture. Face east, you record the same gesture. Face west, record the same gesture. Face south, you record the same gesture. So what will happen is you've got, instead of one gesture, you've got 4 gestures facing on each different direction, but it's the exact same gesture pattern. And then you just name it the same way. So you can do that if that is the mechanic that you want. So there's pros and cons. Obviously, then wherever the user is facing, that gesture is gonna come up as a positive. But if you want to be more restrictive, then simply don't record all the other directions. So there's pros and cons, and it's up to you to decide. So it's very granular in its design. Yes, maybe I'll do something in the future that would perhaps I can add something here like north, south, east, and west, so that you just need to record it once, and then it will extrapolate the different directions for you. But that's in the future version. Yeah, but for now, you can just record it easily on different sides. And also another note is when you do your gesture, like I did this infinity symbol, so it has to come from this. So I did this gesture, right? So this kind of infinity symbol. So I'm coming from the lower left, and then going back to the lower left. So that means if I do an infinity symbol from here to here to here to here, so on the upper, or let's say from the opposite direction, that means it's not going to come up as positive. So there's, so it's by design. So you can, if you want different iterations of it to make sure that the user hits it, which kind of defeats the purpose of gesture recognition, but if that's the way you want it, so you can just record the gestures from, let's say, an infinity symbol coming from here, up, 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 that's one. Coming from here, up, 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 or here, up, 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 up. So it's up to you. Then you can have several of those gestures, and then in the database, it will get recorded and just name them the same way. And then they will all come up as a positive because what the find gesture node does is it just returns this gesture name here, regardless of what the gesture pattern is. If the gesture pattern matches, it looks at the gesture name and returns that gesture name for you. If it doesn't find a gesture, it just returns unknown underscore gesture. Just gonna highlight that again. So that's hard-coded. So you have like this term here, unknown underscore gesture, that comes up if it can't find anything on the database. All right. So so that's how easy it is to use a gesture component. Feel free to ask me in the UE forums, in the marketplace forums, or GitHub, or in Reddit if you have any questions. My preferred is obviously with either in the UE forums or in the GitHub issues if you have a GitHub account. The forums would also be cool, so that other people can benefit from the answers that I give. And all right, and so that when others encounter the same issue that you do, they can also find the answer to it. All right, and I appreciate so much, folks, all of the ones that so far contacted me and at least told me about some bugs and issues that needed to be fixed. So that's why I've been doing a lot of fixes lately. A lot of these small tweaks and small bugs that comes up inevitably with a complex plugin like this one. So, all right, thanks guys. Not gonna hold you up any longer, and enjoy. Cheers.